Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Genuine Chit-Chat. This week, I'm joined by the great and powerful Hedley Knights. Now, you may know Hedley as the producer, sound engineer, and voice of Jault on the podcast audio drama We Fix Space Junk. Now, this is a two-part chat, so this is only part one. Part two will be released next week at the usual time. But in this part, we speak about how We Fix Space Junk got started, its inspirations, some of the bonus content that goes with it, including who the Automnicon voice is, or the Automnivoice that you hear in every episode. But even if you don't listen to We Fix Space Junk, this is still a fantastic episode, as me and Hedley spoke about loads of things. I mean, just scratching the surface, we spoke about a musical they created about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson that he found out about, the Uncanny Valley, Harry Potter, general movies, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Dungeons & Dragons, Nikola Tesla even gets mentioned. So just in part one of this chat, it's a fantastic one for pretty much anyone who wants to hear great conversations, but also especially for those who are interested in sound engineering or anything to do with that, because he talks about that sort of thing, and it's really interesting. So musicians or anyone who's into that sort of field. Now, obviously, I do implore anyone who's listening to go and check out We Fix Space Junk, as in my opinion, it's one of the best audio dramas out there. So, it's free, it's fantastic. Each episode is generally about, 15 minutes long. So it's not very long at all. You can just kind of dabble, see what you think. But yeah, this fantastic chat. Hedley is an awesome guy, and I'm looking forward to releasing part 2 next week as well, because that is also an amazing chat. Now, I've also been a guest on someone else's podcast, the Comedy Geek podcast, episode 11, our sketchiest episode yet. I was actually featured on speaking about my favourite sketch, along with a lot of other guest podcasters. So be sure to go check that out. That's the Comedy Geek podcast, and I'll make sure I put a link in the usual places, description and on social media. Now, before we get started with the main chat, there's a promo coming up for the Whispered True Stories podcast. It's a bit longer than my usual promos. It's just over 2 minutes long. So, if you listen to that promo and it interests you, be sure to check that out. But otherwise, the usual intro music will be starting straight after that, and then the full episode after that. I'll be back at the end just to talk to you guys about the usual things, what's coming up and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, thanks always for tuning in, guys. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. All the usual details I'll put in the description, as well as the end of the episode I'll add more. And, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the chat.
Hello everyone, this is Kate Karen. You might know me as the co-host of the Forgotten News podcast. And yes, I am whispering, but I am not whispering because I am hiding from someone or on the run. The reason why I am whispering is because I want to tell you a secret. Only a few people know so far, and this is the secret. I am the host of a new podcast which will tell stories of true crime, weird disappearances, strange mysteries, wild adventures, spooky things, funny things, and also stories that listeners ask me to tell. But these stories will be spoken entirely in whisper, and every story will be 100% true. In fact, the podcast is called Whispered True Stories. For many people, hearing a story that is told in whisper makes it much more interesting to hear, and listening to a whispered mystery or a true crime story at night has often been found to be relaxing or even comforting for people who have difficulty in falling asleep. Now, I will mention one last thing. Over the past several months, as the co-host of a podcast, I have received many comments from listeners about my voice and how soothing it is when they listen to me tell a story. So, I'm hopeful that the combination of whisper and my voice will give you as much pleasure as all of those very sweet comments have given to me. Be sure to remember the name of the show, Whispered True Stories. Look for it on iTunes
Welcome to Genuine Chit-Chat, where we have honest conversations with interesting people. And I'm your host, Mike Burton.
I'm trying to do as normal as I can.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, I'll see where it goes.
And then again, I have like an on mic voice and an off mic voice. So,
yeah.
But again, that's another thing about not wearing headphones. I'll probably speak more normally than I would if I was wearing headphones. I'll probably start doing a radio voice.
Yeah, because I find like with it all, it's my brain's gone numb because I was thinking about the recording, which I have started now. So subtle. Yeah, it is a weird one with when you can hear him voice, because I find a lot of podcasters like Joe Rogan, what he'll do is every guest that he has to have the headphones on and whatever, but I can't deal with that. It annoys me too much, because it's just when I hear my own voice, especially because it's like 1 second or half a second delay.
Yeah, if there's latency, that's a big thing. With my interface, I have with and without latency.
Yeah.
So I'll feed people their direct volume.
Yeah.
So that's kind of before it gets processed.
Yeah.
And then it will then go into the computer and get processed, and then I could listen to it like what I have done before, like with recording Marilyn. And I was monitoring her with all the effects on, like pitch shifted and stuff. But that was like half a second out. So I just muted out her in my headphones, muted out the clean feed, and in her headphones muted out the delayed feed. So she was hearing herself normal, and I was hearing herself pitch shifted. Right. So that I would know how it would end up sounding.
Yeah. And she's not put off by hearing a weird voice in her head sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I've already started recording, throw right in the deep end. And so I'm here with Hedley of We Fix Space Junk. And obviously we met before when we went to London, as organised by, I think it's Susie, wasn't it?
It was Susie from
Casual Birder podcast. Yeah, who I did a library event with her last week, actually, in Basingstoke.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah,
really cool.
That was quite fun. Yeah, it was interesting meeting with the public and stuff. But also, when it was a little bit quiet, it was quite nice to just chat with some podcasters who were talking about doing maybe a live podcast thing and like all kinds of different things. Like James of the Bottomless Pit podcast, his show is very, very similar to mine, of basically just different subject, every sort of thing. I think I've listened to a couple of episodes and it seems generally a bit more structured, but you know. So I want to get you on it because I'm interested in not only just sound engineering, but also like We Fix Space Junk and things. So I want to ask, obviously you're a sound engineer and you went to university. You are. Did you always want to be a sound engineer? Has that been goal from the beginning?
I've always really been very interested in it. Like as a kid, in the 90s on a computer, there wasn't much to do, like kind of before we had dial-up internet, which we occasionally managed to, you could go to the shop and buy a 0800 number that would work for a couple of days, and you actually got free connection. You had to pay for the time you were on there, but you didn't have to pay. Like the phone call that you made to dial up was free, which was quite a significant novelty.
Well, as a jump back then, wasn't it? Yeah, it was great.
But then you had to go off every now and again just in case someone was trying to get through to you on the house phone.
I remember those days. I remember playing RuneScape with my buddy Kieran and like talking on the phone and racking up a big phone bill and things like that. And then, well, that was like obviously talking on the phone. Then that was slightly after dial-up. So as soon as we got through dial-up, it was calling Kieran all the time playing RuneScape. But I remember before that when it was like playing RuneScape with just talking on the text and stuff, phone call would come through and the whole internet would start to freeze. And it's like, oh, great. And then mum would be on the phone to like auntie or something. And for like 45 minutes, like, mum, I want to get back on the internet. And it's like, can you imagine kids these days thinking that you can't be on the phone and on the internet at the same time?
And also every single person in the family has the same phone number. And so you all could be getting important work calls. Oh, we're expecting a call, so we can't be on the internet today.
Just that sentence is just fantastic. Yeah. I'm expecting a phone call, no internet for today. Oh man.
But so like having like a little sound recorder on the computer, and me and my sister always used to just use all the different effects and see what we could do with them. And then I guess in my teens getting into playing music and such like got me more interested in sound again. Both as for recording our own music, and then realizing that, I didn't really have the passion to go for like, it was always kind of like, if I was in a band that made it big, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to put my bets on it. Like I'm not gonna hope that that's what gets me famous. And I've got friends who really went for it and they've done really well for it. And very, very kind of proud of them. But I don't think I was very much like, my technical mind, I think, appreciates recording more. So I was like, maybe I'll start recording music. And then, then later on finding out that actually, if you can do sound, you can be very, very valuable to people who do video and TV. And
definitely.
Like that. And suddenly stepping in, and if you're personable and know how mics work and EQ works and compression works, then that translates to TV as much as it does to music recording.
I can imagine. I was going to say, because we spoke, we've spoken on Facebook a bit, and obviously we met before, but I was thinking you and I have very similar sort of music tastes, or there's at least a lot of things that converge. So I was going to ask is, when you were young and playing music, I can see in this room there's some bass guitars and standard guitars, if I'm right. Yeah. So do you play guitar then, and that sort of thing?
Yeah. Drums are my first kind of love, I think. I mean, I played keyboard growing up, like keyboard lessons. Yeah. Which is a good grounding for any, you don't necessarily make anything that sounds that nice at the time, but you kind of get to grips with the different instruments. And drums was my first love, and I got really into that. But it's quite impractical. Lots of massive heavy drums. Also, I went
expensive as well.
I went for the heavy rock kit, so it was all extra big toms, extra big bass drum, double bass drum pedal, all that malarkey.
What sort of genre were you playing when you were?
When I first started, I was doing kind of rock. I'm in my teens. I was very much into like 70s and 80s rock. So like David Bowie, Queen, but also like Black Sabbath and Guns N' Roses.
Because the 80s was at the start, basically the start of heavy metal in a sense, but obviously back then heavy metal wasn't the same as what it is today.
Yeah, I mean there was some kind of underground. Well, I mean, people like Metallica started in the 80s, Megadeth, and that. And
Slayer and Anthrax. I think all of them, bar Megadeth, because obviously that was when Dave left Metallica. I think they all started 81, and Motley Crue, and then Megadeth was like 83 or something.
Yeah, so it was all roughly, and then kind of like 84, they all kind of started getting big at the same time.
Yeah,
I think
they were touring together. So if I know that Motley Crue, because I'm into a band called 6 AM, and it's Nicky Six from Motley Crue, his band, along with a singer called James Michael and a guitarist who was the guitarist for Guns N' Roses, DJ Ashba. So they had a project together and stuff that went out with
Supergroup.
Yeah. They're a really, really good band. They made their albums come with the albums of 4 books that Nicky Six wrote. So I got really into Nicky Six's life and Motley Crue and that sort of thing. And like Motley Crue toured with Guns N' Roses because Nicky Six became friends with Slash. So they kind of collaborated and kind of bounced off each other on things. So yeah, so got into that. And then I know you're into some of the more heavier stuff as well. Was that around that time?
That kind of started growing from there. I think the more I started playing music, I think the more I started appreciating the more kind of technical aspects. So yeah, starting from kind of vague, kind of like rock, like Red Hot Chili Peppers, and then going into Foo Fighters, and then gradually getting into like new metal, and from new metal getting into kind of people like Korn and people who are a bit more progressive, and then by the end of it, ended up into like more technical stuff. Like I listened to a lot of Tesseract and Periphery. Oh, yeah,
Periphery are so crazy technical. Some of their music is just like, you just listen to it, I don't feel like I'm intelligent enough to actually comprehend this.
Symphony X and Dream Theater. And
I bloody love Dream Theater. Well, I love I say I love Dream Theater, but it's like I don't love whole albums of theirs. They just have like, they've got the Scenes from a Memory, which is a very clever album, but like there's certain, with a lot of prog rock I find, they're very hit and miss, because there's certain prog rock songs which are like 12 minutes long and you're like, this musically is amazing, but I don't really fancy just listening to it for 12 minutes sometimes.
That is a big thing with tech is the kind of tendency to veer towards music as a sport as opposed to, because also I think you get that in extreme metal as well, like thrash and stuff, people trying to play as fast as they possibly can, and it's kind of like more of a sport than it is a musical listening experience. But and that's the thing, like I think although I love Dream Theater, I'd say like people like Symphony X, who they toured with a lot, I prefer they're still technical, but they're more, song based. They're more like I guess poppy, but there's more kind of coherent throughput throughout it, and they do concept albums which are you can kind of follow.
Yeah, it's concept albums. It's a weird one with concept albums because sometimes you get ones which are just like. Do you listen to Stone Sour? Or
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, because they had a double concept album called House of Golden Bones, and it came with basically graphic novel. So Corey Taylor wrote all the story for it, and he did a collaboration with an artist and did like a 4-part comic series, which I've got, and obviously 2 albums, 2-part. And when you get the albums, like the physical ones, you fold them out and they connect together to make a house. It's crazy. It's really, really cool. Yeah. But that's a concept album, and that's one of the ones that works really, really well because there's some bits that are sung, some bits that are a bit more aggressive and shouted, and it kind of works. But I've had, because I like certain music, when you get some of the heavier ones, especially even me who's been listening to metal now for 8 to 10 years, sometimes you get bands you just can't hear what they're saying, and that doesn't bother me because a lot of the time I listen to unclean vocals as just like, it adds to the music.
Exactly, kind of vocals as an instrument rather than as a lyrical practice necessarily.
Pop music does it with O's, a lot of pop music is like it's like 5 seconds of Summer have that in one of their 2 of their songs, so it's like it can be used as melodies.
Were famous for it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Or a lot of those sorts of kind of rocky boy bands had that sort of thing, which is not a problem with that
too. Like no.
Well, exactly, and there's My Chemical Romance and loads of other ones that just they all do that. A lot of the punky stuff, when it meant like more punk rock or sort of poppy punk, they had a lot of that sort of, because a really catchy thing is something that it's repetitive, it gets in your head a lot, and that sort of thing.
And also people enjoying it. Like, people aren't going to necessarily, like, your fans are going to learn your lyrics, like your diehard fans, but people who have heard it for the first time aren't going to have learned your lyrics. They don't know how to sing along. Yeah. And, sometimes, good catchy lyrics will eventually get stuck in your head, but you can hear na 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 na, and you already know it.
Yeah, exactly.
You do it once, and then it does the second time round, and the second time round you already know what it is.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's already stuck in your head. Yeah,
100%. Yeah. Well, so you're playing music and stuff and performing, and then you realise sort of, was it a thing of, because I've got a few mates that are in bands and things, and my mate Callum's been on the podcast, and he's coming on again soon, and so I've had a couple of musicians on there, and some of my family's musical. I'm not, because I'm useless. I played keyboard a little bit when I was younger, but I know that from being close with my brother and my friends who do this sort of thing, they said like studio time is often very expensive and things. So like, was that kind of part of it? Were you guys kind of like, when you're in the band and things, thinking about recording, and then you saw, this is really expensive? Or what was the transition?
I mean, there is, like, I don't think we would have ever been in a situation where we could have recorded otherwise. So kind of having a laptop, borrowing a mic from somewhere, and I think like our first like EP my band did was like pretty much just one mic, and we kind of hung it over the drum kit. Yeah. And then got the guitarist to listen to that, and then stuck the mic in front of the guitar amp, and then got them to listen to that and plugged.
So some really raw sounds from that.
Yeah, and it was, and I think they still exist somewhere. And like some of them were atrocious, and some of them actually really weren't that bad.
Yeah. Do you still play much music now, out of interest, or in a band at all?
I'm not in a band now. One of my bands had a bit of a reunion a couple of years ago, and we did that for a year or two, which was really fun. And I think it was also good because we were all like, we're all adults, we all have jobs. This is fun. We'll just fit it in when we can. Yeah.
That's the thing. A lot of my friends are finding. It's like you have to kind of, you have like your main job, essentially the breadwinning job, which I work in insurance, so excitement central. And then while sort of side hustle, I've heard people on podcasts call it a side hustle, which is like a passion that you do on the side, which you hope one day could maybe come into something. And obviously with me, that's podcasting. I'm not under the illusion that in a year's time I'm going to be making mega money on podcasting, but it's like
Joe Rogan. Who? Oh no, you mean Genuine Chit-Chat?
Yeah, God, that'd be the dream. God, if Joe Rogan even mentioned Genuine Chit-Chat on any of his shows, that'd be it. My listeners would like probably 10 times in the amount.
Yeah. Or just like, what's terrible? Genuine Chit-Chat. That would probably give you a bump.
That would be good. People go, what's so bad about it? Let's go listen. But yeah, I mean, that would be the dream, Joe Rogan. But that's pretty much impossible. He's the king of podcasting or whatever.
But I mean, weird things do happen. Like we did a musical just before we launched Space Junk, actually. We did 2 musicals at the same time. That was a bad idea. We recorded We Fixed Space Junk, and then these 2 shows came along, and we had to basically pause it before we released it. So we actually started recording over a year ago.
Oh, wow. I was going to ask you that sort of thing.
Well over a year ago now. But we didn't end up releasing till the March. But yeah, we did one of the musicals was all based on a joke of Beth's friend. I guess, I don't know if I said already on the podcast, Beth is my girlfriend and we fix Space Junk together, which is a audio drama podcast.
It's the best one. It got me hooked. I'd never listened to one properly, and then I met you, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this a go, and I bloody love it. And I've listened to it twice now because I showed Megan the whole thing as well. We've been listening to it the last couple of days. But in the intro, I'll give all the sort of a bit more background and stuff. Yeah.
I didn't want to just start talking about a person that we hadn't.
Oh no!
Actually, I think you did mention.
It's fine. No, I can't remember, to be honest.
If I don't have a script in front of me, I don't know what I've said.
I say I have. No, I'm joking. But so you and Beth,
so we did this musical, and one of her friends had a massive crush on Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Oh yeah, well, he's pretty damn good a guy.
Who wouldn't?
Who doesn't?
But, yeah, exactly. But it always seemed like a very unlikely combination. She's just a massive fan of Shakespeare and cardigans and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I'd say that's probably her thing. I'm not going to name her just in case she takes offense to that. But it was a kind of unlikely combination. And as a joke, we talked about making The Rock musical, and we actually ended up pitching it to Vault's Theatre, and they loved the idea. So they were, yeah, brilliant. Can you do it in January? And this was in like October, and we're like, oh, we have not written it. We were kind of hoping for March maybe, but January, let's do it. So we wrote and produced a musical. I wrote all the music and performed all the music, and made it as a backing track to play out on the night. And somehow Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson found out about it.
Oh wow!
And tweeted us wishing us luck.
Is that what that is over there?
That is there, yeah.
I saw in my corner of my eye, there's a tweet from Dwayne Johnson on your little corkboard with a lot of We Fix Space Junk stuff.
It's the best kind of inspiration wall. Like,
if Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson said anything to me, like even mentioned Genuine Chit-Chat, I'd be like, okay, framing that on the wall forever.
Exactly, yeah. So, but yeah, I think we did an interview with people who are now good friends of ours, Unseen Hour, who are an audio drama.
Yeah.
Who do live shows recorded in London every month. And they had a show on at Vault's Theatre Festival. And yeah, they did an interview with us. And then the Metro's, I think the person who was the wrestling correspondent for the Metro was, I don't know how much wrestling news the Metro gets. It was like, The Rock is in a musical. Yeah, that's reasonable. So they linked to that video. And then from the Metro posting about it, we ended up then getting interest from like 5 or 6 different UK newspapers.
Wow.
And then from that, presumably is where, because we didn't tag him in it or anything, because part of us was like, will they sue us? Will they tell us to give us a cease and desist?
Yeah.
But yeah, like say he found out about it, and he retweeted the link to our ticket sales.
Oh wow.
So
that's
saying,
mad.
oh yeah, like because also it started off as a show about The Rock and ended up as being very bizarre, like, because we were like, oh, no one could really play The Rock, so he won't be the main character. It's set in the future. It's a young girl who's in this dystopian kind of nightmare escape, and the memory of The Rock is what gets her through. And then she has a fairy rock mother,
wow,
who is basically a puppet.
This sounds amazing. Is there any recording of this anywhere?
There isn't, unfortunately. But we had ideas of I was doing an extended run. It wasn't really ready when it was released because it was very rushed. But we got very good ticket sales, as you might imagine, if The Rock recommends it. And people generally really liked it. Definitely needed if we were to do it again, we need to redo it a bit. But it was really fun working on the music. And it just does go to show you can get noticed. You don't put your money on it. But,
I kind of, with podcasting, I look at it in the way of like, I do this because it's a passion of mine, and I'm not doing it so I can get big. That's not the impression. Isn't, I'm doing podcasting because I think I'm going to make a career of it one day. I started podcasting because I got really into podcasting a few years back, and then I was just like, I was talking to some of my mates about it, and in the past I've had projects going on my own thing. Like in college, I did a YouTube show with my mate, and then I did music videos for bands for like a little while. And I worked as a graphic designer at a cassette and CD production place. So I was graphic design. I had a hand in a bit of like low key audio sort of stuff. And because I was graphic designing for loads of different bands and things like that, I kind of know what to do and what not to do for logos and things like that. I'm a very talkative individual, and I know
It's a match made in heaven.
Well, exactly. It's like I know loads of people, so it's like I love it when I met you and you said like the reason you and Beth started We Fix Space Junk is like, well, you're a sound engineer, she's a script writer. What could you possibly do?
Exactly.
What could there be? It was like audio drama. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, as you say, like it's one of those kind of hidden communities, because you know when we first started talking about it, we were like, is that a thing? Like, could we do like a BBC Four style radio play, but release it as a podcast? You know, is that something we could do? We started doing it, and then discovered when we started kind of like publicizing it that there are hundreds out there. Loads of people do it, and some people make a lot of money from it as well. But more to the point, it was like there is an audience there for doing art, having a hobby that actually makes a difference, and you know people can hear. And now thousands of people around the world. Yeah,
I saw you hit, I think you shared on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, 50,000 downloads.
Yeah, I think not long after that we hit 60,000.
Nice, yeah. You do deserve it. I mean, it's one of those shows where it's just like, when I was listening to it and I showed Megan, it was like, well, the production quality is so good, it sounds like a big budget, like proper show. Like, not insult, it's not proper, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I know exactly what you mean. I was having this discussion the other day. I think it's a really interesting thing about audio drama, because there is such a low bar to entry, certainly in podcasting in general to an extent. You can make with the right know-how, and you don't need to be an expert to start either.
You can YouTube stuff, anything
exactly.
that you don't know.
I know people who've they've written an idea, then like, how am I going to turn this into a podcast? Kind of Googled it, spent maybe 50 quid, maybe pushing 100. Which, it's pocket money, it's birthday, it's Christmas money. It's kind of doable. Like, not to say it's the cheapest thing in the world. No. Like, anyone can do it, but
it's like an instrument. Like, you buy a guitar, like a cheap guitar, it's going to cost you 100 or so quid.
Yeah, you can buy a guitar for 100 quid. You could probably buy a guitar for 50 quid at Cash Converters or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have that entry point, and then you're on the same playing field as everyone else.
Exactly.
Because in the music industry, you don't get to just release albums.
No.
You don't get to go into a studio and record your band and then have it put on the shelves at HMV.
Exactly.
But with podcasting, you really do. And the gap between starting and getting, whatever you could call the 100% level of, you could get full quality shows very, very easily compared to, like, say, if you wanted to make The Avengers as a film, you need a multi-million pound special effects budget. Let alone cameras and lighting.
Yeah, the amount of choreography and fighting and just every aspect costs millions.
And even then, not necessarily Avengers, but like big budget, Hollywood movies, people will always still be like, oh, shitty CGI.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's just kind of like, it takes you out of it, or they'll try something new, and like, even when like certain special effects are getting so good you can't even notice them anymore, they'll do something like they'll de-age a character, and like they're just walking around with this uncanny valley face on, and you're
I think that's what the new Ant-Man, Michael Douglas is young. Yeah, there's a flashback with him young in it, and everyone was going, he looks really weird. And I was like, he looks like young Michael Douglas. Like, he looks exactly like it. And it's that almost uncanny valley sort of thing where people are a bit like
Tron Legacy.
Yeah, with Jeff Bridges.
And they kind of had a kind of like photoreal face on him, and like, I mean, Star Wars, you're a massive Star Wars fan, like with Rogue One.
Oh, Carrie Fisher, and Peter Cullen, who played Tarkin,
exactly, and then there was a lot of debate over that, and whether that was right, whether that was wrong. One, whether it was ethical or not, and two, whether it was just pointless. Like, would it have been better to get an actor who looked slightly like them, or, I mean, personally, for Cushing's, I think.
Oh yeah, Peter Cushing. I got his name wrong.
Sorry. I think the way I would have approached that is, because at the very first beginning of that scene, I don't think it's that noticeable. Like, you can tell that there's something like the lighting is kind of strange on him.
Yeah, when he's looking at the reflection in the mirror.
Had you done had you done that to Hux as well? So when Hux went into that room, he also had a photoreal face, because you could do a photoreal face of someone who's an actor who's there so much easier than you can someone who's not there.
Yeah.
So had they done that with him as well, and you could have blamed it on the light or something, then I think your brain would have been much easier to think, oh yeah, these are two characters who are the same talking to each other. I think that would have worked better.
It's when he turned around, I remember watching it, and he turns around and you see it, and it is, because for people who don't know the uncanny valley, it's when something is so close to being human-like. They use it a lot of time with robots and things like that, especially in AI, and the way things look is like, if it's like 95 to 99% accurate, it's worse for people to look at than if it was like 80%, because it gets so close and something isn't quite right.
It unnerves us, but that's the thing. Like, I mean, you pick up a round object and draw two dots on it and a line, and you've got a face.
Well, I do that with cars. Like, a lot of the time you drive, you see faces in cars and things.
Yeah, and you do, like, you can look at a house, and then there's two windows and a door, and it kind of looks like two eyes and a mouth, or, anything. You kind of, we're hardwired to see patterns in things, because mistakenly thinking something is alive is much better for you than thinking something alive isn't.
Exactly.
If you just think, oh, that's just a log, a stripy log. Oh, no, I'm being eaten by a tiger. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty bad. Whereas you go, oh, God, oh, no, it's just a log.
Exactly.
That's much better.
Better feel foolish than dead.
Exactly, yeah. So we do see patterns in things. And, I did my girl Beth, also, when we did this puppet musical, she made all the puppets. She's made puppets for Brian Cox and Robin Ince.
Oh, wow, really?
Eric Idle.
Does she know?
Tim Minchin.
That's correct. Oh, wow. Tim Minchin, yeah. Megan's a big fan. If anyone hears any little tapping in the background or some slight reactions in the background, my girlfriend Megan is sat in the background, so if you hear gasps and little bits of laughing, it's like, I didn't put them in After Effects to make us sound popular. It's Megan over there in the background. But does Beth know anything about Brian Froud, out of interest?
Oh.
He's the one who did Dark Crystal and Labyrinth.
She probably would. She would certainly know people who know.
Yeah, well, my brother and sister-in-law, she married my brother, I always get confused with stepbrother and brother-in-law and things like that.
Oh, I always do. I always just like, my boyfriend's sister. My sister's, my brother's girl, my sister's boyfriend.
Yeah. It's, they love Brian Froud, with, Dark Crystal and Labyrinth being two of the big things. And I think Wendy Froud, his wife, worked on the puppet for Yoda and Empire Strikes Back. So they're quite big in puppeteering, and especially with Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, they're two of the biggest known sort of feature-length films with big puppets and stuff in them. And he does workshops in Glastonbury. Like, they have this yearly fairy festival thing, and he goes there and that sort of thing. Maybe maybe in the future, because I know that Beth was busy today, because you're both such busy bees. Maybe sometime in the future, maybe in a year or something like that, we can have either just Beth or both of you on. Yeah,
she was glad not to be here, but I'm sure she would be very happy to.
Well, as I'm only
do another one.
I'm only like maybe 2 hours away, and also Megan lives in Andover, so she's only really, I think it took us about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30 minutes really to get here, or to the Airbnb nearby, and it didn't cost much for that. So, and we always like coming to London and stuff because we're talking about going to the Harry Potter thing and going to some of the museums. So
Beth was in Harry Potter in most of the Harry Potter films.
Really?
Yeah. You can actually see the Warner Brothers lot from her sister's window.
Oh, wow.
Which is where she used to live.
Oh, did she do that thing where she was like a lot of extras with like the kids and things?
Nothing major. One of her friends had a full speaking part and has a wand in the Harry Potter experience.
Really?
Even though she got cut.
Oh, okay.
All of it, like her character got cut.
Oh, wow. God, that must have been quite devastating.
Yeah, but I mean, got paid more than Beth and her sisters did. But,
I see. Yeah.
And her sisters ended up working when the Harry Potter experience opened, ended up working there. And one of them now works for the Warner Brothers archives.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. God, you know everyone. I'm going to have to get some contacts now.
And I also need to keep track of my stories because I'm sure I've started like 2 anecdotes and spun off of them already.
That's fine. That's part of
I was talking about, what was I talking about?
We were talking about musicals, puppets. I came on to Brian Froud.
People who work for like the Henson company, which also collaborated with
Brian Froud and stuff. Yeah, their Hensons were a big part of that sort of thing. I think Brian is a lot more of the concept design and ideas man, and then Wendy is a lot more of hands-on puppet creation. But then obviously the Henson company, obviously they made the Muppets, so it's like one of the biggest. I think, don't know if they made Sesame Street or something as well, or they had a hand in it. I know that...
A hand in it.
Wait, no, yeah. That wasn't as clever as I was intending it to be. But yeah, man, God, there's so many tangents we can go on. But that's what I love about my show is just like, I just want to... Because having like an interview, it's like, if you call it an interview, it sounds really formal, and it's like it sounds like I've got all these really big points for it now. Like I scribbled together like 10 bullet points on the way here. Like that's as far as I go. Like just in case I need to remember certain things. Maybe I'll try and loop it back vaguely, even though some people can be like, what about this story? It's like, I can't remember where we were. So, so you guys, did you do 2 musicals, you said? Because you did the rock one, and then you did...
the other one was a Christmas one. And that was also puppetry. And
wow.
It was the Fran and the Littlest Reindeer, which was interesting because the main character was called Fran. The actress who played her was not called Fran, but the actress who played the main character in The People's Rock was called Fran. So when we were talking about Fran, like the show ended up being called Fran as like the working title. Like, we'd always refer to it as Fran. But then when we started crossing over into The People's Rock and we were talking about actual Fran, oh, you mean T, who was the character she was playing?
Yeah.
So then it's like, oh yeah, T and... No. It's too confusing. But T, who is Fran, Francesca Mintov-Chij, is the voice of Marilyn.
I was going to say I recognise that name. Yeah, We Fix Space Junk.
It's it was lovely to meet her through that. And she came along and played little Marilyn and Marilyn's mum. Very briefly.
Well, yeah, I'll say, as we're talking about We Fix Space Junk, I might as well get into some of those things a little bit. So we obviously spoke about you kind of got into sound engineering when you were into music heavily when you were younger and things. And I'll talk to, hopefully if I can speak to Beth next year or whenever, if you're not so famous, you're fighting off the paparazzi with sticks and stuff. But I'll talk to Beth about some of the script writing process because I don't want to ask you all the questions and you answer them all for her. And then, but
also, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Well, yeah, you're the producer, not the script writer.
Piano man.
Just the piano man. That's great. So yeah, with We Fix Space Junk. So what was the thing that made you go, let's do this? Did like Beth have a script kind of half written for a sci-fi idea or?
Yeah, well, I mean, Beth's always been a massive fan of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, bloody love. I assume she's read the books. Is there a radio thing?
The radio play.
Yeah, and then there's the series and there's the movie. I've only seen the movie, but because I'm a scrub.
I'd seen the movie and I'd seen the 70s TV show.
Yeah. I watched some of that, but it was a bit...
It's very
dated.
Yeah,
that's the thing. It's like even more naff than a lot of old Doctor Who, and it's like that's pushing the boundary for me a little bit.
It was low budget Doctor Who, which in the 70s is saying something.
Well, yeah, because Doctor Who, like they burn all the budget on like 2 or 3 main episodes, and the rest of them
would be like made of cardboard.
Well, nowadays you see some of them now, and it's like I haven't watched Doctor Who since David Tennant days, but like Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant, I really liked that Doctor Who. But there are the odd episodes where you're just a bit like, is this even really what is this? Like the lowest budget things they could have because they just burn all their budget on huge CGI Cybermen and stuff.
Made of rubber gloves.
Or mannequins seem to be very, very common. It's like, oh, we're in London. It's Christmas time. Mannequins are attacking again. It's like, okay, great.
I remember the original mannequins attacking one where they were like Madame Two Swords or something. Tom Baker, maybe. I don't know. Any Doctor Who fans would be like appalled at everything I'm going to get wrong.
Yeah.
But then, like the waxworks all suddenly like. The waxworks, slightly wobbly waxworks, will suddenly start moving.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think that, like, the weirdest things that I always remembered as a kid was, like, the fact that the fingers all flapped down as one.
Yeah.
And there was a gun in their hand. And it was like, I wonder how they did that special effect. But, like, if I were to look back at it now, I'm sure it'd be atrocious. They'd just be holding a mannequin hand in their actual hand. But so, like, she was, like, I think a lot of people, Douglas Adams, who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide, included, I think, refers to the radio version as the audio drama as the definitive version. Yeah,
because it's quite extensive. A lot of people who've only seen the film, I think it's 4 books or something.
There's lots of books.
And they're thick, because I tried reading one of them and it was a bit, when I was in school, it was too much for my brain.
Yeah, the
Restaurant at the End of the Universe.
Restaurant at the End of the Universe. Oh, I don't know. Beth knows she's read all of them dozens of times.
Yeah.
I've listened to the whole radio play. There's 3 original series, then there was 2 series that came out around the noughties.
Yeah.
And then there's 1 series that came out recently. which I had to say I haven't listened to the recent one.
Oh, is that an audio drama?
Audio drama, yeah.
I wonder how long it's going to be till Hitchhiker's Guide gets picked up by Netflix or someone to be released. Because if they had a big budget behind it, that could make some mega money.
And also, like, when you look at when they made the modern Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy film, that had really big names in it.
Yeah,
like,
I loved it. Stephen Fry was the narrator of
Stephen
the...
Fry, and also a lot of those actors and actresses have become a lot bigger. Like Zooey Deschanel, like way before
New Girl and stuff,
or anything like that. She was Trillian.
Sam Rockwell, he was Zaphod. I love Sam Rockwell. He's one of my favourite actors. He's great in everything.
He's really good.
But yeah, I think John Malkovich was that guy in the place where they were sneezing and saying, the whole...
Yeah, there's a huge staff actors in there. So yeah, I could very much see that as being... as working well. Because also it's such a big universe. Like the film is kind of focused on the first half of the first series, basically.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, there's loads of the original series, and then some of the books that came later then got made in the early noughties. And unfortunately, I think one of the triggers for that was Douglas Adams passing away.
Yeah.
Was kind of, but like, this was so good. And in fact, some of these were never made. And there is a character in one of the noughties ones that was actually taken directly from the audiobook read by Douglas Adams.
Oh, nice, yeah.
So he actually plays one of the characters who is constantly dies and gets resurrected, which I feel is kind of a little nod there. I think he would have appreciated, like, being posthumously cast as the one who gets resurrected, but that just dies again.
Yeah, that would be. I'd love to, because I don't know. I've only seen the movie, but even the movie, I loved the universe. Like, one of the reasons I love Star Wars so much is people listen to the podcast and go like, not again, but I'm going to say it again. Anyone I meet, I talk about it. I won't go into too much detail, people, but like, I love Harry Potter, I love Lord of the Rings and things, but Star Wars for me, the reason I love it so much personally is because the universe is so gigantic. You got the movies, but then you've also got the comics, you've got the video games, you've got the amount of books there are, and it's like,
have you ever played
series.
Age of the Empire, the RPG?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, we've got.
I never played Knights of the Old Republic either, which makes me a heathen.
But Edge of the Empire is really cool. It's like Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh man, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons recently with my mates, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of, I'd say it's more accessible than Dungeons and Dragons.
Really?
Which again, because I think it's quite an intimidating thing. And now I've started playing actual Dungeons and Dragons. Occasionally I've realised, it's a lot easier and simpler than...
It's the first step.
You might think, it's the whole kind of getting your head around. So wait, where's the board? Where are playing pieces?
And getting the names of everything.
What's the point? What's the goal?
Yeah. It's like a sandbox, isn't it? Like
you
sandbox
can do
RPG.
whatever you want. And it's like, yeah, but what am I trying to do? What's your character trying to do?
Yeah, that was kind of overwhelming for me a bit, because I started playing with my mates about 6 months ago or so. One of my mates is the DM, but the next campaign they're doing, which my other mate is writing, I'm not going to be involved with that because of podcasting and stuff. A lot of them, they've got a lot more free time than I have. So with me, I'm just like, I'm so busy. It's like I'm hindering them being able to play every week.
You don't want to commit to it and then like, we can only meet once every 2 months.
Well, that's what we've almost been doing. Because of me, they would want to meet like every 2 weeks, if not a bit more. Whereas me, I can make it work maybe twice a month, just because.
Drop in as a side character.
Well, exactly. That's what we're talking about. Just every now and then, if I do get a free day, I can talk to the DM, and if he says, this Sunday you're about to say, yes, so cool, let's just pop you in. I can be a side character, gets killed or something. I'm more happy with that. Be a little guest star. It'd be cool.
That's a cool thing about Edge of the Empire is, I'm just going to go off mic and point to it just so the audience that are listening at home know what part of my living room that is in.
Yeah.
Like certainly the starter mission, I don't know what you'd call it, campaign, does have a goal that you're kind of trying to go towards. You don't actually have to follow it.
Yeah.
But there is that kind of ongoing driving force, and there are some pre-rolled characters, so you can play them, and equally you can make your own characters. And you can follow that story. The dice system is simpler. I mean, if you're used to D&D, it wouldn't be simpler because you'd have to learn a new dice system. But it's essentially like the red ones are your battle dice, the yellow ones are your whatever dice, and
like utilities, and it's that sort of thing.
This is if you're getting attacked. This is if you're attacking. Which one wins? Oh, you got more on the yellow dice than you did on the red dice, so you win. Or they got more reds, or
that makes it more of because D&D's been around for ages. Because I watched some Stranger Things, they were playing it in that. Was the original RPG because it was like along with those adventure books. You read like the
turn to page. Which would you like to do?
Turn to page 27 if you want to open the door. Turn to page 83 if you want to kick down the door. And it's like they choose your own adventure things. Yeah, they're crazy.
I think D&D was actually based on army like reenactment style.
Oh really?
That's
interesting.
Their parents were into like Civil War reenactment and stuff, and there was like tabletop war games. And again, your listeners who know about D&D will be like, that's not true. You've missed a vital point. But they based it on like battle reenactment kind of strategy things, and they'd mix that with their kind of comic book.
That's awesome.
Heritage.
Yeah, it's such a cool game. It's one of those things where it sounds quite overwhelming to kind of get into, and the first few sessions are a bit of a drag because everyone's kind of getting used to stuff. But once you all know what you're doing, you get in a battle and you start doing that sort of stuff, and it kind of gets more and more. I just like your giant globe over there as well. I was admiring that.
That wooden little barrel next to it is the best dice box she laser cut.
Oh, really? Because my mate's got a dice tower where he bought it online where it's like been laser cut and you open it up and it's like a castle and you drop the dice in the top and it rolls out.
We've been talking about laser cutting some of those,
that's crazy. How do we get on? I was talking about Star Wars because I love the big universe of it, which was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Space Junk.
Yeah, how we started Space. So I think Beth actually found some notes from early uni where she'd started talking about this character who went around space fixing things. There's a website that is completely free to use called LibriVox, which is basically audiobooks, free audiobooks.
Oh, so she's got like all the ones that are on Amazon permanently free. Is it got like those sort of ones listed in a way?
Basically, it's all voiced by volunteers.
Oh, okay.
And it's all public domain books.
Oh, so the old like Shakespeare and sort of that sort of thing.
Yeah, so you got things like Shakespeare and Frankenstein and kind of the classics, but also you have some contemporary stuff as well, because when sci-fi was beginning, it was largely in magazines, or saying what would be referred to as the time as magazines. Kind of, there would be books, but you maybe order this book. You'd get a book every month or 2 months.
Oh, one of those things,
and they'd have a collection of short stories in, maybe a couple of articles in. But you or I might think of it as a book, but referred to as magazines. And writers would sell their stories to them, and this is people like H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh wow! Okay, because he's basically started off the whole Cthulhu is probably the most famous thing he's done that people would know of.
The Elder Gods and the Old Gods and stuff like that. But also Arthur C. Clarke, Philip K. Dick, who wrote Blade Runner. Well, the books that Blade Runner was based on. And to L. Ron Hubbard.
Oh, wow. Good old Scientologist.
Classic sci-fi writer.
I think he wrote more fiction than any other person on the planet.
Maybe got carried away with it.
Apparently he never did drafts. Apparently he just wrote, apparently I'm not sure for every single book, but I remember hearing almost every book that he did. He just didn't even...
the first draft.
Yeah, it was just first draft and he released it, because he released more fiction than any other human on the planet, which is just crazy. I'm not going to get Scientology, but...
Yeah, I guess that's another whole rabbit hole.
I could talk about Scientology for hours. I've watched the Louis Theroux doc on it. I've watched there's a couple of podcasts with Joe Rogan.
It's so hard to even get your head around the fact that a sci-fi writer who wrote about aliens and gods would then suddenly be like, oh, but this one's real.
Yeah, ignore all these ones, but these select couple, they're actually real. And it's like, I think he was actually quoted saying, if you want to make more the way to make the best amount of money is by starting your own religion. And he said that, and then a few years later, he just started his own religion. It's like, come on.
I think there are certain political figures at the moment who have been quoted as jokingly saying they'd do what they then went to do.
Yeah, well, like the Trump thing, where it's like,
I'd never get into politics, but if I did, I'd run for the Republicans because
they're the dumb ones or something like that.
Yeah,
they're
like, easy to manipulate. You just
and then he just suddenly
he did it, and it's like, oh well, I guess you were right.
Yeah, you stuck to your word, I suppose. But yeah, with so Beth found some old sort of notes and things of this.
So that was probably like, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago.
Okay, if you don't mind me asking, how long have you guys been? You don't have to go to critical details.
3.5 years.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
So so she found these things, and I think there was a LibriVox story that she really liked. It's called The Repairman, and it's one short story, and it could have been so much more. It could have been a whole world.
Yeah.
And it was just this whole concept. And this is like, I'll probably get the date wrong, but I'm pretty sure this one was 1940s, maybe.
Oh, crazy.
Between 1920s and 1940s.
That's super old school, yeah.
So like Lovecraft was 20s, I think. Well, you had like people like H.G. Wells doing War of the Worlds in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
Then like 20s, I think you had Lovecraft.
Yeah, I think J.R.R. Tolkien, I know that's not sci-fi, that's fantasy, but he was after one of the wars. He went off to war, came back and wrote them, I think. Yeah,
that was 30s, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe 20s, 30s, 40s. They're that kind of, wartime era.
Yeah.
He was talking about all these futuristic things. It was really amazing reading or listening even on LibriVox to this story about a guy who just goes around space fixing stuff.
Yeah.
And like he had like a drone that he sent down, and it was just like, I had this little remote control thing that I went down, and it had a lens on it that would take photos and send those photos back to me. And I could over the radio.
Oh, and crazy.
And it was just like, you're talking about stuff that genuinely got invented like 100 years, 80 years later.
Would you hear about like Tesla? I don't know how much you know about him.
Nikola Tesla.
Yeah. Where he was like, he said that one day there's going to be things where everyone's going to have a device in their pocket and everyone's going to be interconnected by this. He used a word which it's not internet, but it's a word that is used. It's still a common word, and he used it. And I can't remember what he called it. Some sort of, I think it's network. He said there's going to be this network, and everyone's going to be able to communicate with each other with something in their pocket.
And just be able to transfer information, and we'd have.
Yeah, and he said, I just can't do it. He said, I've got enough projects on my plate at the moment, and I'm too busy, and I'm not the guy. I haven't worked out all the kinks, so it's not going to happen yet, but it's going to happen at some point. And this is like late 1800s, I think it was, or mid 1800s, and he was talking about how the internet was going to be a thing, and you're like, imagine talking to him. Like, apparently he was not great socially. I think he married a pigeon or something, or he fell in love with a pigeon. And it's like, okay, it's clearly
I think he was a little bit of a social reject, which is often where the greatest people are. It's just people who can't like maybe connect to the greater world, maybe have more going on inside. Right? Yeah,
but some people are just genius level. Like, another tangent. Have you because you mentioned Joe Rogan on it? Do you listen to Joe Rogan very much?
I've not listened to it very much. Do
you listen to the Elon Musk one?
I haven't listened to
You should give that a go. It's very interesting. Yeah, it's quite a long one. And in it, Elon Musk smokes weed with Joe Rogan because obviously, everyone seems to, and it's legal and lives as well. And apparently their stock prices dropped horrendously the next day. Apparently they've evened out again now, but it's like, there's all this big thing about it, him being a CEO. And I think Tesla, they're quite strict on not doing drugs and working and all these sorts of other things. Yeah. But it's a really interesting interview because the first 20 minutes, half hour is kind of, I don't know, rough in a way, like clunky, probably I'd say best way. But after a while, they get more in tune. But you can tell the way the way Elon Musk is thinking and talking and stuff is like, it's not the same at all. Like, Joe Rogan's an intelligent guy, but he's not a genius, but he's just an intelligent guy. And when he talks to people like Sam Harris, who are, I'd say, geniuses, but then you get Elon Musk, and he's just, the way he communicates, you can tell, and he says exactly what he needs to say, and no more.
Have you played Elon Musk's video game?
No, I haven't.
He designed a video game when he was like 10.
I know he created PayPal, I think.
You can play the video game he designed when he was 10 online now.
Really?
And it's not bad. Like, I mean, it's kind of like, a little more complicated than Pong, but but it's just like for a 10-year-old, also like given he'd probably at 40, 50, something like that.
I think he's around 40, yeah. I think
so when he was 10, like this is like, we're talking 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
So like he was designing video games then as a 10-year-old.
Whereas nowadays it's a whole, now you can buy a gaming laptop and you can start coding on there, get a couple of some of those things on Steam, which you can create your own game with, start from there, kind of go and eventually create your own thing. And then once you've done that, you can get into more complicated stuff. But when you're that age, like, you go look at computers in the 80s, and it's like a lot of the time it's just black screen and a green text, and it was like just typing in code.
Exactly, like, it would have been binary or basic maybe, and then like I don't know enough about coding. I don't think C++ or anything was invented at that point.
Yeah, I'm not knowledgeable that much about that sort of thing, but I would imagine it hasn't been, because the language changes,
something like that, and it's just. Yeah, very, very intelligent guy.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend everyone to check that. It's just interesting hearing. Because you can have an interview with someone like Elon Musk, but it's generally it's all scripted, it's focused, all that sort of stuff. And it's always interesting hearing someone of that magnitude of intelligence. But you can tell he's not he's very, very intelligent and he understands people, but it's not the same level of social understanding as Joe Rogan in a way. Like social
Joe Rogan, you feel like could have a conversation with anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, some people, I think, conversation isn't their strength.
Yeah, you have to kind of like, I've had a few.
Also, I mean, Elon Musk is not his
we didn't need to.
language.
Well, exactly. He's from Africa, isn't he? He's South African or something.
He's a hodgepodge of various different.
I knew he wasn't from Europe or America, and I was quite surprised. And he does have a kind of twang in his accent, but it's not like really obvious. But yeah, it's some of those. He's from South Africa. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, producer.
Maybe English is his first language, then I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
Afrikaans, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's still so impressive if everything he's done is just mind blowing. But yeah, Joe Rogan can talk to basically anyone. I think he's got that. You have to. I think it's one of the things that will tangent again is that's gonna be the word of the day. Yeah. Is with certain people you meet and there's different intelligences you can kind of measure.
Yeah, and it's talk about like emotional intelligence and social intelligence. And
yeah, exactly. And so there's certain people like with me, my intelligence is I'm a jack of all trades, master of none in the sense of I know small amounts about everything, and I've kind of dabbled in a lot. Like I'm no writer, okay, but I've written stories before just for the sake of it, and I was writing in a journal for a while. I was contemplating writing a book on my old laptop. I've got part of a book I was kind of writing, which was it was a non-fiction. It was just kind of me. It's basically me doing the podcast, but just typing it out essentially of my views on life and things. And then there's a rap song I did online. Do you need to pause, or are you all right?
No, sorry.
That's cool. So I've kind of dabbled in a few things, but I'm not an expert in anything. But that's kind of why with me doing the podcast, I kind of like that sense of, hopefully I can talk to certain people about almost anything. Because if really with a lot of people with their passions, like if they're really into, let's use drumming as an example, I've got a mate who's a drummer. So I probably know more than the average would on drumming, but substantially less than a musician. So I can ask.
That's a brilliant place to be an interview. Yeah. And just
that's it. Yeah.
Having that broad subject of knowledge, like, because that's the thing. Some people have masses of information, masses of knowledge on one subject, but not much on anything else. And you could talk about other things, and it's like, no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, actually having a broad knowledge base, and I always try and keep a broad knowledge base, so that you do. And again, I mean, like you'll see, I've got like probably 6 or 7 guitars there. I've got like 4 or 5 different instruments downstairs.
When you mentioned about being a drummer as well, and you can do sound engineering, so you can do all the synth stuff.
So that's the thing. So like, I mean, I played a lot of instruments, but I was never like amazing at any of them. But knowing all of them, coming into music production, was suddenly very useful because one, I could put a song together myself, but also recording any given instrument, I understood where that musician was coming from and what they were doing. And when I got into TV, learning about cameras and VT and all the other kind of elements of television, and understanding those, making sure I understood those, means that it's easier to do my job because I now know who I'm dealing with and what it is they want and they are expecting, and just having a broad knowledge base is very commendable.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things when I was kind of I'm not one to really believe in fate, that sort of thing in my own beliefs and stuff, but like. It was like a very pleasant coincidence. It made me feel like this is kind of, it sounds so grandiose, but also what I should be doing in a way, which is kind of how I feel about you and Beth and We Fix Space Junk. It's just like there's so many people who, they go, I want to make an audio drama. So they start learning everything from scratch and get good at it. But as you guys, you obviously, you got together, your relationship, and then, I'm also a scriptwriter, and obviously I do sound engineering. We can create this thing. We've got loads of contacts and people we know from these little pieces as well. And then obviously you did the musical, and all these little things kind of intertwine into like a very nice thread. And with me, it's like, as I dabbled in YouTube and music videos, and my friends are in bands, and I like every genre of music, and I used to read quite a lot, but then I'm into TV series and movies and but I'm not an expert in anything at all. That's the thing with me. So that's kind of aspire to be the Joe Rogan. Is just like, I think a lot of my intelligence is either sort of kind of problem solving I'm fairly good at, but social in a way of just when I talk to people one on one, even if they're people who are quite introverted and can be quite hard to talk to, usually I can get a good conversation out of them. But you do find when doing a show like this, you know, where I talk to a huge amount of people, you can tell when there's people who are musicians, you know, so you can almost just ask one question and let them go because they're promoting their band. They're often the front man. They know exactly what they want to say and what they want to do. But when there's other people who are quite introverted and they've got loads to say, but they're not necessarily that confident, there's certain people who I've heard, like certain podcasters who, I'm trying to get better at it because I'm not obviously perfect, but you get certain podcasters who either say, give them a question and then they leave them. And then the person starts to almost drown in their own words because some people will just, they'll just talk because they're looking at I imagine they're looking at the interviewer and being like, are you gonna, they don't want to stop talking because they don't want to be in awkward silence. So they just keep going and going and going. And sometimes as an interviewer, you do have to steer the conversation a little bit.
I find that really interesting about, I used to listen to quite a lot of Mark Maron. And before I got into audio dramas and have time for anything else audio drama, and yeah, like I found his interviewing style very interesting because often he would subvert the direction of a conversation and talk about just random stuff about, like, they'll be telling an anecdote that maybe is not necessarily pre-prepared, but they probably told a few times before, and he'd just pick up on one element and so tell me more about that. Yeah. And they'd be a bit like, and they go like, oh, well, this, and then they just talk a whole lot about what they did at school in Indianapolis or something, and you're like, oh, but I went on to Hollywood. It's like, yeah. Like,
so we know that story.
Yeah, like,
yeah, exactly.
And actually get a really interesting, nuanced interview that's like tells you a lot.
Yeah,
from something that would have just been, so I did this, then this, then this, then I went to film school, and then I did this, and then I went to Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, exactly. And it is that kind of thing. I mean, I didn't used to think this way, but people have told me it, but I sound like such a dick saying it, but it's like people saying interviewing, there is like a knack to it, there's an art to it almost. But I'm not saying I'm some sort of grandiose artist or anything.
I mean, like, there's some things you're good at and some things you're not good at.
Exactly, and talking to and at people is one of my talents. So with a girlfriend laughing in the background, yeah.
Especially when you said at.
Yeah, when I said I was like, talking to people, yeah. Talking at people, yes. Agree. Yeah. But with We Fix Space Junk out of interest, have you found, like, I'm starting loads of half sentences. Let's try that again. At the end of all the episodes, I like hearing the sort of musical stuff. It sounds a weird bit. It's like I saw on Patreon that you're going to be either you have or you will be releasing the music of We Fix Space Junk at some point.
Yes.
Is that going to include, like, this is only for me? This has nothing to do with the listeners. I think anyone else cares. But me personally, like, I love hearing. It's only about 20 to 40 seconds at the end of each episode where you've got the Automnicon voice talking over it, saying rate, review, subscribe thing. Is that one piece of music that you take chunks out of? Or?
That is composed every week.
Oh, okay.
And it's the last thing that happens. So the episode is done, and when it's basically all but ready to upload, I write the last bit of music.
Yeah.
And that will be usually in the early hours of the morning. And it's actually really relaxing because it can be quite stressful working to a deadline, especially considering we have day jobs and work long hours. So sometimes, some weeks it's a closer cut thing than others. But yeah, sometimes if it's just like been working up to the deadline and then, yeah, okay, it's done. So now all it really needs to do is it all just started off as just like, please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. Yeah. And we didn't want to take people out of it too much because it's fiction. So
yeah, especially if you're episode after episode,
exactly,
listening in bulk.
You know, in this I can say, subscribe to We Fix Space Junk on iTunes. It is not a weird thing, but I mean, it's a bit weird.
Just in the middle of this podcast, just by the way, We Fix Space Junk.
But yeah, like in our show, it kind of feels like the whole thing is, I mean, we do credits and stuff, but yeah, it just seemed a bit weird to just do it. So we tried to keep it in
universe,
yeah. To an extent, or at least kind of blur the fourth wall slightly.
Yeah, well, that's kind of fun, tongue-in-cheek sort of things.
Yeah, and then that ended up becoming, because it all started off as just glitchy voice, and then got glitchier, then music started creeping in, like synths started creeping in, vocoders and stuff. And and I think there is a higher tier of Patreon that has access to all the music so far, just it's in an RSS feed on podcatchers, and also a Google Drive folder that they can just grab other, like, with vocals, without vocals, whatever they want. But we're wanting to streamline that And basically what we're planning to do is release that possibly on Bandcamp as an album, kind of like the soundtrack of, and also release an Automnicon album that is all original music, full-length songs.
Oh, wow.
Written by me and Beth. And that will be coming out at some point.
That's awesome, because I'd love to hear both of those, because I was saying to Megan, the music... doggos! I love hearing... it's great. I'm just excited by dogs. So it's... but yeah, with the music at the end, I love the sort of style of it, because it's got... Obviously, I like a wide variety, but I do really like heavy music, and it's got... You can hear the heavy elements of it, especially like with the... I find that I'm so not very musical, so like the drumming, for example, is quite key in it. You can hear it quite loud, and it's got a lot of crash in it and things like that. So I like hearing that at the end of the episode, and it's like when I saw that thing on Patreon, because I support you guys on Patreon, but it's like when I saw that, I was like, I need to, when you release that on Bandcamp, so I need to get in on that, and there's some of that, because I think just all those little bits, I can hear how cool that music sounds. I'd love to hear more. Like, I know you say you're not in a band anymore, but do you have... On the side, do you release any music, or do you kind of subtly write anything? Or
no, really, to be honest, like it'd been such a long time since I'd done a creative project, and I have probably like since I was 15, 16, probably got hundreds of half begun ideas for songs that kind of like I do one session working on it. Oh yeah, I'll come back and finish this, and never do. And so I've got lots of first verses and a chorus of dozens of songs, and one really lovely thing was with We Fix Space Junk is having an excuse to write music and be creative. And, the theme tune, obviously I wrote, and most, probably, I don't know, maybe 75% of the episodes have an original song or an original piece of music in them somewhere. Which is, just really fun to do. It's a really nice outlet. So, being able to do the album will mean that it's not just having to work in around stuff. It'll be, have space for the songs to breathe. Exactly what we're going to do, I'm not sure yet, but I think it was a goal when we passed a certain amount on Patreon that we'd do an album and a book.
Yeah,
and
I saw about the book. That's a great idea.
It's already in production. It's already started being written. Beth is working away on that. I think I can tell you it's about an intern who works for Automnicon.
Oh, so it's actually its own... Because I think what I saw online was the... is there a version of the script that's basically been released on, I think, Kindle or Easter or something like that?
We are working towards that as well, yeah. I think we're planning to do these scripts because we have PDFs of all the scripts. And I think we're thinking of doing a book of the scripts, but also a book of... Oh, actually, we have... there are monthly Patreon PDFs that are little in-world documents. So there's little bits that are like... the reports of when they found the ship and stuff like that. So little
tidbits.
In-word tidbits. And I think it's, but this is going to be a novella, so like shorter than a novel, kind of longer than a short story, but about an intern who works for Automnicon. And I believe it's going to be intertwining with the plot slightly. So
awesome.
There will be points that people who listen to the show will recognise, and then people who have read the book will then notice in the show.
With an example, obviously you don't have to confirm or deny any of this, but like it would be like what I'm thinking of is with Miss Lamb, when there's a point where she talks to someone who is about I think it's towards the end of series 1 with like the sort of after credit bits. There's points where she's talking to colleagues like, and talking over the intercom, and like maybe obviously not asking you to confirm or deny, but in my head it's almost like, the intern that got put down, they were a friend of the intern in the book, and those sort of little tiny details which...
Have you been hacking my computer?
Well, I was going to ask also, with Automnicon, the voice of Automnicon, which is, We Fix Space Junk, is that you, or is that someone else? Unless it's secret, some sort of... Maybe it's George Clooney as a sub.
He didn't want us to say. Have you been hacking my computer? No, the deep voice is Beth.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All of the
the dun dun.
Kind of, yeah.
Well, and there's that the dun dun dun. Well, hello to Automnicon. Who's that? Is that the same? Is that also Beth?
Oh, yeah, that's Beth. So like dum dum dum.
Yeah,
the kind of
your
cheesy
mission today.
Elevator music. Your mission. That's all Beth. Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, we always called it the Miranda Hart voice because if you pitch the formants of Beth's voice down by about 4.5, for everyone at home who wants to make my girlfriend's voice sound like Automnicon, you're down by like four semitones. The formant though, not the pitch. And it creates this really interesting thing because when you pitch shift, if you just kind of do a straight pitch shift, you bring everything, all the frequencies. The most natural way to do it is actually change the speed of it. So if you play something slower, it'll be lower pitched because the vibrations are just getting longer. The wavelengths are getting longer, which is a lower pitch. But with pitch shifting, there are lots of little algorithms that will, to try and keep something the same length, it does a bit of, okay, so what, we're going to take these waves and multiply them a few times or like cut them up, and then you do get some artifacts from that where it doesn't sound entirely natural, but sometimes that works.
Yeah.
And formants are basically you keep the same note, but the tonality and the timbre is dragged all the way down, and that's often where you get, in some ways, a more natural sound because it actually sounds like a lower pitched person, and because Beth's in it as herself, as the Automnivoice, and she's also like Samantha's mum.
Yeah.
You could briefly hear on the phone a couple of times.
Yeah, I think at the end of the last episode, actually.
Yeah, the end of the last episode, Sam brings home. Although apparently we did get some people contact us who were a bit like, who was on the phone at the end? It's like, Samantha's mum. Oh, that was Samantha. I didn't look at, and like, I just realised Dax says, oh yeah, are you sure I want to do this? And she just says, yes. And like, we didn't actually say
I
who.
had to confirm that with Mike.
Yeah, Megan.
I heard it and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Samantha's mum.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, it is. And I was like, okay, I'm fine.
Yeah, I was pretty certain. But obviously I listened to the whole show basically twice over because I listened to it once, loved it. And when Series 2 was coming out, I said to Megan, I was like, you need to hear this because...
You had to be very careful in audio drama as well, because another thing about not having the visuals, like, in fact, I think the very first tangent I was going on was about how, you know, you can have £1 million CGI budget and still it's not quite right. But with audio, you can have much better CGI because it's just what people are picturing in their heads, and you're not no one's gonna be disappointed with the visuals because they're their own visuals, and it means different people see it differently, and different people have different interpretations of how people look. But equally, it does mean on the flip side, you have to be very careful because if you just suddenly see a character on the screen, they don't even say a word, you know who it is. But with audio, you don't. You can only work out from the voice or if someone's mentioned them.
Yeah, or like subtle things, like if you've got a character, like if you had Hulk, for example, if we say we were doing an Avengers one, if you had Hulk, you could hear a grunt and then some footsteps. Like,
big bloody.
And then you go, oh, here comes the big guy, and then you know immediately. So and there's other things, if someone's got jangling keys, or if their personality is covered in leather, you could hear the leather move, but it's all different subtleties.
Yeah, equally, if you know, like, Bruce Banner just said, and then like Hawkeye said, You wouldn't necessarily know, like, they're quite, you know, similar voices. And if they said a full sentence, you'd be like, oh yeah, I know which one that is. But so you do have to be very careful. And I don't think we've really ever had that before. But yeah, I think that was the only kind of slight one. We had a few people just double check with us. I think someone thought it was Marilyn. And I was like, oh no, this is just going to really confuse people.
Yeah, I can imagine that. What is it? What have you found? What have you found is one of the biggest challenges that was unexpected for making an audio drama?
Time.
And that's the end of part 1. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. Next week will be part 2, so you know that's something to look forward to. And in the coming weeks, I've got one episode recorded with Dr. Glenn Livingston, who's written a book called Never Binge Again, which has sold over 600,000 copies. So, you know, that's quite interesting. It's a really intriguing chat of how he sort of talks about how that works and things. And then I've also got a 2-parter recorded with a guy called Junior, who runs essentially a clothing brand called We the Lifers. It's a bit more of a clothing brand, but that's kind of the easiest way to explain it quickly without having to get into the sort of specific details that he gets into on the podcast. I've got a couple of episodes coming up that I should be recording, a couple over Skype, similar to Dr. Glenn Livingston, and then also a couple more with friends and things, a couple of familiar guests. So that's something to look forward to running up to the Christmas period. I think that's more or less it for the time being. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as usual. Instagram, I also put up movie reviews, and I go to the cinema a fair amount, so it's new movies as well as other ones. I just did one today of Easy A, because me and my girlfriend watched that and I hadn't seen it, so, why not? I also post about certain other things I'm doing that are vaguely interesting, and a lot of the episodes I also add photos with them. One of the ones I did last week with Sophie, I've also put up a post about Iceland, some of the sites from Iceland, which is quite cool. And one I did a few weeks ago as well, I did with my mate Alex, and we spoke about his tattoos and his tan lines of his flip-flops on his feet. So there were photos of that as well. So, it's good to follow me on Instagram. There's also 30-second snippets of all the episodes I do. So I put them up there when I release the episode. So if you subscribe to us on Instagram, you don't have to subscribe onto the standard podcast things. But if you did both, I would very much love that, and it would make me a very happy bunny. So, no pressure, but I will cry tonight if you don't do it. Anyway, I think that's it really, guys. Thanks as always for tuning in. I really appreciate everyone listening this far. Hit me up on any of the usual social media channels if you fancy a chat. And thanks as always, guys. And I'll talk to you next week.